We are live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, the man that they call GC because he is clearly a golf commentator and because his name is Greg Cohen. Say hello, Greg.
Wow, well played, Pablo. You're just like 3 steps ahead of me. No matter what I'm going to be talking about, you are the man with the plan and you're prepared. Way to go, brother.
You know, I thought I was prepared, but today tested my nerves a little bit. But I'm really excited to have our guest today. We have with us Ken Meleen, who has been investing with JWB now for about 10 years. Ken built up he is from Palo Alto, California, right? From Silicon Valley, right, Ken?
From Los Altos,
California. Born and raised. Say it again.
Spanish word for the heights.
That's right.
We're sitting up about 400 feet elevation, looking out over the valley.
Oh, wonderful. And you got a great story to tell, Ken. We can't wait to talk about what your journey has been and the idea that you had, built up this business and built up all these things to find yourself in a situation that a lot of people find themselves. And we're going to get to that. For now, I want to welcome everybody that's joining us. If this is your first time joining us, you know that on Tuesdays, we want to hear from you, right? Like we're going to be talking about Ken's story and we want to know when it registers with you, when you see yourself in the story, you want some advice based on what Ken's been. We want to hear from you. There's 2 ways to do that. One is to use the chat function. When you open up the chat box, it defaults to only showing it to panelists, right? So there's a little blue box that says panelists. If you drop that down, put panelists and attendees so everybody else can see you in there. That's what our friends, our show regulars, Jake, John, Lee Bishop, Rick Margwin, Marilyn Cotterman, Scott Bellotti, you're doing it correctly. Eddie Harris, Denise, welcome everybody. If you can chat with us there and you can chat with each other and make a friend. There's also, if you want your question asked on the show itself, then you pop open the Q&A that's on the bottom right of your screen and put the questions in there. Because as you'll see, we got a community here that loves to interact with each other. So that chat box flies by. So if you want me to be able to keep track of everything, get your question answered, use that Q&A box. It's easier for me to keep track of it. And last but not least, if you want a breakdown of rental income properties and how JWB does it, it's your first time here or you want to hear it again, go to JWB web class, download the free investor package, listen to Greg's glorious voice for 20-25 minutes explaining all the ins and outs of what JWB does. And if you want to hop on a call with our team, it's as easy as going to chatwithjwb.com and picking out the best time that can work for you. But without further ado, now the star of the show, Ken. Like we said, we teased this show, right? We talked about how, most people think of investing in rental income properties should be reserved for a certain period in their life. But at the end of the day, once you reach retirement, what you're looking for is cash flow to be able to live on. And you had this long career, you built up this company, you had a retirement ready to go, and you reached a certain moment when you realized that what you had built up so far, you had to kind of shift your strategy. Can you take us to that moment where you started having to shift that strategy and tell us a little bit about that moment, and then we'll talk about everything else.
Well, first of all, Pablo, one correction. I have only been working with JWB since July of 2019.
Oh, okay.
So it's only been about a year and a half.
Oh, sorry about that.
Amassed a real healthy portfolio, I think. So in answer to your question, I retired from my managing a company in the year 2000 at age 65. So I had a few projects ongoing. It took me about 5 years to clean those up. The company I was working with at that time with my daughter was a environmental engineering company, and we did underground tank removals and soil and groundwater cleanup. So some of those are ongoing for quite a while until you get to a point where you get closure. So anyway, I got to 2000, and at 2005, I finally could sit back and say, okay, what do I want to do now? I have a third of an acre property here in Los Altos, and we've been here for over 40 years now. And I needed to finish up my landscaping, especially on the downhill east side. So I went to work on that. Well, I kind of pittered around, and in 2012, my brother came out and he said, you're not getting any younger. You need to get going on this thing. So I started working in more earnest, and I've been at it for 8 years, and I'm still not seeing light at the end of the tunnel. So I've got a lot of outside work to do. But there were some issues with the financing. We went through probably several different refinancing scenarios, and then took out lines of credit and so on and so forth, because the money we were pulling in just wasn't meeting our financial needs. And there were six major additional expenses during the year that I had to save money for and be able to pay. Those were property taxes, insurance, and home and auto insurance. I tried to pay them off on an annual basis. So there's, a couple $1,000 out of your pocket right there. So I had a cash flow problem. About 2013, I was out golfing with a friend from church and found out he was a reverse mortgage loan broker. So we had a few little conversations and ended up going with a reverse mortgage there. And that provided me with about $90,000 of loose change to do something else with. So I applied most of it probably to my outdoor project, landscaping. We took a few trips, but pretty soon we were running out of that as well. And also I was watching a SEP IRA that I had accumulated while I was working. I saw that going down to zero. In fact, I closed it out at the end of 2018. So fortunately, I found another loan broker who dealt in reverse mortgages, and he says there was a new package, a new program on the horizon, or that was available, and it was called a jumbo reverse mortgage. And it was funded by private investors and had lots more to offer in the way of providing funds. They did a appraisal on our house, and on that basis said we could probably borrow up to about 1.5 million, and that's a lot of money. Well, we had to pay off our previous reverse mortgage, and we ended up with a little over $800,000 available to spend. I didn't know what to do with that. I'd had experiences in the stock market, had won some, lost some. I wasn't ready to really put all that money into the stock market. So my broker says, why don't you just go to a broker? I signed up with Schwab, and we bought a couple of T-bills, one to mature in 6 months and one to mature in 12 months. So moving along in the spring of 2019, I was taking piano lessons, believe it or not, trying to keep my brain healthy and my fingers nimble, from Harold Litwin. And I found out that Harold was also a client of JWB, and he gave me information on your company. So when it came close to time to roll this first T-bill into cash, I called JWB, talked to Courtney, and she said, well, we'll set you up with a phone chat with Mike Stewart. In the meantime, Mike sent me a little bundle of, I think there were 5 homes in it, with the usual site information, home information. And so I reviewed those, looked at them, studied them, and decided on we probably should buy a little townhouse and a 3-bedroom standalone single-family home. So when I got to chatting with Mike, I revealed all my problems with cash flow, and he says, well, it sounds like you're on the right track. If you pay cash for these 2 homes that you're looking at, you'll have a pretty healthy cash flow that will pretty much take care of what you're looking for, what you need. I think I had told him I need at least $1,000 and I'd rather have 2,000 a month in cash flow. So we did. We proceeded and got those secured, and we signed the final papers on them in late September of 2019.
Ken, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Before you talked to Harold and you had these T-bills and you knew that they were maturing, did you have a plan before that? Like, did you have somewhere else earmarked for that money that was going to create that cash flow for you, or where were you there mentally?
I did not, because the banks and I didn't know of any financial institutions that were paying more than 4 or 5% interest. And I thought, that's not going to do very well for me. I'm going to just see this money drift away, just like the previous reverse mortgage had. So
I'm curious, Ken, do you remember the interest rate, the yield on the T-bills?
Oh, they're like 1.5%, 2%, something like that. It was not astounding.
Yeah, and it's gone even down from there. But you were faced with a challenge that I think a lot of listeners can relate to. It's you needed cash flow. You had something in your life that required additional cash flow, and it was really difficult for you to find an investment that would have a respectable yield that also paid you on a monthly basis, right? That was the big challenge.
Right. And I had previously invested in several real estate deals. One was an apartment combine put together by an attorney in Gilroy, and we bought into that. I think we put $15,000 into it, and it with the recession of the mid 2000, 2005, 2006, it went downhill, and I lost it all. I invested in another, they called it low income housing up in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And that worked out fine. I received about 20,000. I put in about $30,000. I received about $20,000 in tax deductions from that. Mm-hmm. But when it came time for them to sell the property, I think we only ended up with about 15,000 in cash after that. So I can't say that it was an outstanding investment.
Ken, this is really incredible to hear. Thank you so much for sharing your story in such detail. And I think what's really incredible is that you're obviously very accomplished, and you have these assets that you have to decide what's the best risk-adjusted return for your assets, and you also need to make sure that you have significant cash flow coming in. So you've got a lot of opportunities here, but you also have some very strict criteria. It's interesting to know that you also maybe didn't have so much success in some past real estate investments, right?
Right.
Yet you look to our model here, and we're in Jacksonville, Florida. I don't know how many miles we are from Los Altos, but it's a long way away, right?
Cross country.
Yeah. But knowing that you had maybe hadn't had as successful of an investment in real estate, something was different about it here for us, right? And your decision to now invest, and now we're up to 6 properties now. Can you talk through that process of, even though maybe it didn't work in the past, maybe what was different about what you saw here with JWB?
Well, I trusted Harold extensively. I've known him for probably 20 years, and he has been involved in music at Bethel Church, where we attend. He's a excellent pianist, and he plays the trumpet beautifully. I don't know if you know that about him, but quiz him when you next see him.
I met Harold. I know him well. I didn't know this to this extent, but he is just a fantastic individual, and one of our top referrers as well. So I'm not surprised.
Well, we had an interesting past. And in fact, in about 1950, I met his dad, and I actually bought my second car from his dad. So when we started attending Bethel again, his dad was still living and was alive then. And his dad was one who had come over from Germany, excuse me, and had learned the carpentry trade. He was sponsored by a cousin, I believe. He learned the carpentry trade. And while he was doing carpenter work, he also started buying lots in the area around the church in San Jose. This is just a few miles away from the Winchester Mystery House. So he bought lots and he'd build houses and he built up a real estate empire, not only of single family homes, but I believe he got into maybe multiple family and even apartment structures. So when Oscar passed away a few years back, Harold inherited the job of managing this real estate empire. And I've watched Harold and I think he moves with grace and great intelligence. And I really appreciate the friendship that I've had with him. Now I think I forgot your question, but let me just move on. I went to visit your office in November of 2019. And I met Ashley, who was a lovely young lady. She's just as cordial and has that Southern charm. I just love working with her. And I met Mike Stewart and we did some touring, had lunch there and all that. And at the same time, I said to Mike, we've got a few bucks left in our Schwab account. I think I'd like to try going through the ropes of investing on a loan basis, 25% down. So he sat down and he showed us a handful of properties and we settled on one on, I can't remember the name of it now, but we settled on another 3-bedroom house and put down a down payment. And we had that secured on a loan basis by mid-January of 2020. Mm-hmm. Now, the next month, guess what? Our second T-bill matured and I was sold on the program. So I called Mike back up and chatted with him and we put money down on 2 more homes, which we had in the fold by the end of February 2020. I was going to stop there, Mike, and I was going to say, you should tell the people the benefits of owning 3 homes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you want me to go through that, or I would love to hear from your perspective. I mean, people hear from me all the time, Ken.
Well, that's true. I watch your program twice a week and I find it full of valuable information. But the one thing that I saw early on was that by the time when you get to 3 homes, you've reached a point where they kind of support each other. At some time, you're going to have a vacancy. And when you have a vacancy, you probably just have a vacancy in one home, but that may last a month and a half to 2 or 3 months. And while you're suffering the lack of rental income there, you're supported by the rental income from the other 2 properties. So 3 is a good number to strive for when you're first starting out.
You're exactly right. I think what it comes down to is, what is the purpose of this investment, right? It's beyond just delivering the highest return on investment, because the reason why many people are coming from the stock market into rental property investing is because they're searching for consistency. And what we share with clients like Ken is, if your goal is consistency, you need to have more than 1 rental property in your portfolio. Because no matter how good your property manager is, no matter how good JWB is that we are not going to be consistent with 1 rental property, because we are going to overperform when your home is rented. And this may happen for 4 years or 5 years, but eventually your resident is going to move out. And in that year, we are going to underperform. And so if consistency is the goal, this is what you get, you know? Now with JWB, our average resident stays 54 months. So it's a long time until that moves out on average, but it's still not consistent. So what we share with clients is, listen, if this is going to be a part of your strategy and you're coming to us for consistency, we need to build a plan so that you are there and we have the assets to build a consistent portfolio. And so while it's not important that every client buy 3 homes right off the bat, we're going to work with you so that we can get you there. And the goal is to get you to that consistent portfolio, that 3 homes measure or more, we want to get you there before your first resident leaves on average. And luckily for us, because we have such a long resident stay, for us, that's over 4 years. So we've got some time. So it's a great thing to talk about. Those who may not be able to buy 3 homes right off the bat shouldn't be scared. You should be buying your first rental property. But the plan is we'll work with you, of course, to do this. We do this from the very beginning. When you come on board as a client, we're going to build out that plan so that hopefully by the time your first resident leaves, you have that consistent portfolio and you can achieve what Ken has been talking about.
And Ken, if I can break down a couple of the things that are coming through in the questions, right? Just to iterate what you went through. And by the way, I'm that person, Greg. I'm the person that's buying one so I can get into the game, and then I'm going to build up the cash flow to buy others, right? So there's a couple of ways to do this. But Lee Bishop originally asked, Ken, is $2K per month going to work for you, or are you going to be investing in more money with JWB in the future? You've clearly shown that you're investing in more, but can you talk about what your cash flow was when you had the first property, kind of just how your cash flow increased from 1 property to 3? Can you paint that picture?
Well, with the 2 properties that we first bought in September of 2019, we were getting cash flow over $2,000 a month. And with the third one added in January, that provided probably $200, $250 more in cash flow. So we were up around $2,500 plus in cash flow at that time. And like I said, the next month, February, we purchased for cash 2 more homes. I think they were both they were 4-bedroom homes, and their rentals were a little higher, $1,250, $1,300, I think, something like that. Mm-hmm. So our cash flow improved significantly. We were up close to $5,000 a month in cash flow, half of which we probably didn't need. So we needed to start thinking about what to do with the rest of it.
Sounds like a good problem to have. So if I'm keeping track, then it was 2 in cash, 1 finance, and then 2 more in cash?
Yes. And let me just explain that with the reverse mortgage, if people are not familiar with that, you get the money, they get the lien on the house, but you don't pay any monthly payment. The interest that you generate, the interest due on that, simply goes on and adds to the amount of the loan that you have out with your lender. So that eliminated a large portion of our cash flow problem as well.
Greg, do you have a lot of other investors that go to this reverse mortgage in order to unlock cash flow based off of like a big pile of cash? Is this a unique situation?
This is pretty unique. You know, reverse mortgages are there, but it's not something that a lot of people are sort of aware of. I think there may be a negative connotation on them sometimes as well, but it can be a tool to be able to raise capital, to be able to invest in assets that then can provide cash flow for individuals. Like anything else, you have to do your research on it, make sure it's going to work well for you. But that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with Ken today. We get so many questions here in the show and in the group about what are some strategies to be able to raise capital. And this is a new one. This is not something that a lot of JWB clients have done. But when done effectively and correctly, this is something that sort of, you know, was the basis. This provided the capital for Ken to then go and find these assets, you know, that can produce this cash flow and get him to a place where he says, well, I have too much cash flow now. I need to figure out what to do with it and how to, you know, what to do with that extra cash flow. So,
well, something else happened at five homes, right, Ken? Isn't there a level you unlock?
There certainly was. When we reached the 5-home plateau, our management fees went from 1% per month down to 0.9%. So over a year's time, that was providing another $1,000 of income.
Yeah, and that's something that we haven't talked a lot about on the show as well. So it's called the JWB Elite Program. And so when clients get to 5 properties in their JWB portfolio, we drop the management fees. So our standard management fees and what everybody sees as we do our property of the week, when we go through the evaluation, is 10% of the rents that are collected is the standard management fee. Well, for clients like Ken, who have 5 properties or more in their portfolio, his management fees are 9%. So there's a huge savings there. It saves him thousands of dollars every single year, just in that cash flow right there with those 5 properties. And then when you get to 10 properties under JWB, under your JWB portfolio, we drop it again. We drop it from 9% down to 8%. So it's another example of goals being aligned. We want to help you accomplish your passive income goals. We want you to continue to fulfill your buying plan with JWB. You're only going to do that if we do what we say we're going to do for a long period of time and you have a great experience. And as you do, we can reduce your costs as well and everybody wins.
So going forward now, Ken, you got these 5 properties, right? You got more cash flow than you know what to than you know what to do with it, right? More cash flow than you originally needed. What is your plan going forward now? How are you seeing, this asset class, your retirement plans, how you're planning for your future? Can you talk us through kind of your strategy?
Well, let me back up just a little bit and tell you what happened to us in February of 2020,
Mhm.
this year. You know what happened in March of 2020?
I'm familiar.
We got shut down. Now the one house was rented, the one 4-bedroom house was rented, but there was another house on Free Avenue that we didn't have a renter for. And come March, we still didn't have a renter. And we had the COVID-19 shutdowns. And I fretted a little bit about that. I'm sure Greg fretted a lot about that. But as it turns out,
when COVID broke, I think every business owner in America and everybody for their own family, we were like, okay, well, there's no playbook for how to handle this one.
and there are still ramifications for that. Just yesterday, Santa Clara County went back into a full lockdown. But we went 3 months without finding a renter on that. And the management team at JWB finally said, well, let's drop the rent price, $50 a month. And bingo, right away, we had a renter in there. So, and they rewarded me with a little, I guess you'd call it a bonus. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Greg, but I was paid, I think, $1,200 or something. The amount of that $50 rent drop over a 2-year lease period. I thank them for it. And I don't know if you want to talk about it, Greg.
Well, I love talking about everything. I mean, there are so many things that I talked to Paulo in advance of the show and I'm like, hey, this is how this went about. It's a little bit outside of the norm. And he's like, Greg, just talk about it. Just talk about it on the show. Be transparent. And so that we always lean in with transparency. So it sounds like, and I wasn't aware of this, Ken, so you'll have to kind of help me fill in the blanks here, but it sounds like we put the rent amount at what we thought it would be on your evaluation. And then we weren't able to rent it out for that amount. And so then we dropped that rent to that resident. Is that how it went?
Correct.
Fantastic. And so then it sounds like we made a decision because we care so much about doing what we say we're going to do as far as under promising, over delivering. It sounds like we made the decision to give you that rent credit because we made a mistake on that. We thought it was going to be higher. And it sounds like we gave you that as a form of a credit going to you. Is that right?
That's correct. And that just reinforces my confidence in working with JWB. It seemed like we're all on the same page. When I have a problem, I can discuss with you or with Ashley or Mike or whatever, and it gets resolved. I don't have a problem with that. One other problem that we had, and I don't know if you've heard of this, Greg, but the house that we bought in January before, well, I think the renters were settled in it, but I got a call from Ashley and she said, guess what? Someone stole the septic tank pump.
Oh, gosh.
And she said, sorry about that, but it's going to be about a $650 repair item. So I said, well, let's keep them having, let's go with it, get it done. You know, by that time I had enough cash flow that it wasn't a cash flow problem for me. So, but things will happen that you have to jump through some hoops now and then. I want to say before I answer Pablo's question on what I'm doing going on, that once we got rent established in the Free Avenue home in June and paid our first rent replacement fee, the cash flow was coming in and things looked pretty good. The history of JWB on rental collections, even through COVID, was that you were getting over 98% of your rents. And that was encouraging. So we went ahead and said, we've got some money left in our Schwab account. Let's buy another house and take out a loan and buy another house. Teresa Waters of Loan Depot was exceptionally helpful to us in both of our loan applications. And we purchased that home. We signed papers on October 2nd of this year.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So we're up to 6 homes now. And I can say we essentially purchased 6 homes within 13 months.
Wow. Just
And
incredible.
we're happy with the program. Now, going forward, Pablo, we're not sure what we're going to do, but we stand in a position, I think, to help out our family to start with. Some of our kids and grandkids have obligations that they're having difficulty, credit card accounts. We can help them get those paid off and move forward. And I think we have 3 daughters. They show an interest in investing in the JWE program, so we might have further conversations there. But I think one thing that I would like to pursue, and I'll probably be talking to Mike Stewart about this, is that we have 4 homes now that are financed. And how many does a senior citizen need finance to feel comfortable with their cash flow? Well, I was comfortable with 2, and certainly I'd be more comfortable with 3, and with 4, I think we have some money sitting there that could be put to use elsewhere. So I am contemplating, and my wife has to agree with me, so I'm contemplating taking out a loan on one of those homes that we own outright, generate some cash from there, and maybe go on a program of purchasing 1 or 2 houses a year for the next few years.
You know, that's a really interesting question. In fact, I wanted to ask you about your decision. And just to make sure I'm understanding this, I'm looking at your portfolio here. You guys can't see it off screen, but I'm looking at your 6 homes. We have 4 of them that are owned free and clear, and we have 2 of them that are financed. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, great. So now what you're saying is, well, this has been a success, and you're looking at those properties that are owned free and clear and saying, well, I could then take out debt on those properties, or 1 of those properties or 2 of those properties, and then turn that into maybe 3 more houses or 6 houses or something along those lines. That's the question.
Right. And I'm cognizant of some things you have said on your program a number of times, and that is that you can borrow, you can go on a loan basis on up to 10 homes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this depends on your financial, your credit rating, your financial account, and so on and so forth. I wanted to say before that with our economy here in Santa Clara Valley is a whole lot different from what you experienced in Jacksonville. We have a lot of startups going on here. We have a lot of high-tech industries. We have a lot of people coming in. The startups, people work for stock options, and when the company goes public and the stock options are available, they turn the money into cash, and they spend a lot of money on homes. So we have seen the home appreciation here in Santa Clara Valley over the past probably 20 years up around 10%. And when I can buy into a reverse mortgage, which I pay 6.45% interest rate on, that's a good deal for me. I'm not hurting myself by using that kind of a technique.
Absolutely. Especially if you use the funds that you generate from that reverse mortgage. And then, on the two properties that you bought that are financed, you're then taking out inexpensive debt. You're using the money that you've borrowed, and then you're leveraging that. So when the market goes up, let's say 4% a year, your real return from the appreciation is much higher than that, right? It might be 10, 15%.
And I have to say that mortgage money right now is probably the lowest I've ever seen it in my lifetime. We paid for the first house we were in at 4.5%. For the second house, which we got locked into in July, the interest rate is 3.625, I believe, percent. And I still feel that tendency toward conservatism, so I'm paying down more quickly the first loan. I'm going to let that second loan just sit there. It's not hurting me any. All I have to do is pay the monthly bank note.
And so you have such an incredible story, Ken. I wanted to ask you a few more questions about the decisions that you made about buying and then how you bought. Because the general consensus is that as folks get closer and closer to retirement, they have less of an income source, right? Less income sources, right? They don't have their active income source.
They may be out of a job and unhireable.
Well, they might have such a good golf game that it doesn't even matter, right? But a lot of folks say, okay, well, I'm going to go into something like T-bills, or I'm going to go into something like an annuity or something like that. You made the decision to go away from maybe a more traditional asset class. You went into rental property investing, and then you bought with cash, right? Now, in addition to that, you didn't just buy everything with cash. People ask me, when should you use financing? When should you not use financing? For every investor, it's a little bit different. It's dependent on a lot of things, right? We openly talk about how your best return on investment, especially in an appreciating market, will be when you're using the bank's money, when you're taking out debt to do it. But a lot of our clients that get closer to retirement age choose to buy in cash. And they say, I know that I could earn a higher return elsewhere, but I think that this is the right thing for me to have more cash flow coming in for each asset. Well, for you, you had 4 properties you bought with cash, but you still bought 2 with financing. Can you talk a little bit about why that made sense for you?
Well, the first one, I wasn't afraid of going into financing. We've owned, I think, a half a dozen homes in our lifetime. So I wasn't afraid of it. And I wanted to just see what the parameters were of going in and getting a financed home. And I tell you the truth, I didn't know if I had the credit status to be able to, with no paycheck, say no paycheck. What is the bank going to say about not having a paycheck when you want to apply for a home loan? And that was one of the things that I was concerned about. Well, all that I think came out. Our credit score came out quite high, and we've got our cars are paid off. Our credit cards are basically paid off. So our credit score is going to be high. So I didn't have a lot of worries there. And then we bought the next 2 for cash. And then in July, we put money down on a 6th home, and we decided to finance that. And the reason we went to financing was that's all the money we had was for the 25% down, plus closing costs. Had about $60,000 in our account. And the other thing was that I can't remember.
Well, I would assume that it had to do with, the return on investment being higher. But and maybe I'm taking a leap. So tell me if I'm not thinking the same way that you thought, but I'm looking at what you did, where you had these 4 properties that are owned in cash, right? Producing maybe, let's say, a net income to you, maybe about $1,000 a month, let's say somewhere around there. And then you're looking at these 2 finance properties, and maybe what you said is, you know what, I can get kind of the best of both worlds here, because I can use financing. Once I've got my cash flow goal met, then I can use financing as a way to get a better return on my investment. And then what you could also do is take that excess cash flow that you've earned from those 4 cash flowing or 4 properties that are owned in cash, that extra cash, and you can start to aggressively pay down one of those loans. So while you have 2 that are owned with financing that may have 30-year mortgages on those, you could probably attack one of those mortgages and maybe pay it off in 10 years, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe
we're
5
on the
years,
same,
I don't know.
we're on the same page there. In fact, I've been paying $1,000 a month where the requirement was only 850 or something like that. And I think in 2021, I'll bump that up to 1,200 a month, and that will pay down that loan in about 10 or 11 years.
That's exactly, and that's such a cool nugget for everybody to learn too, because it's not either or. You don't have to buy everything in financing. You don't have to buy everything with cash. And it may work to where buying with cash is the right thing for you to do. Buying some with financing might also be the right thing for you to do. And you can do an accelerated debt pay down to where it's sort of a best of both worlds approach. So I thought that was really valuable for others to learn from.
Well, there's something else in there, and that is when you finance a home, you can write off a lot of stuff, as you have told on your program many times. You can write off your interest, you can write off your taxes, but what you write off is deducted from your basis from an IRS standpoint. And you can probably explain that better than I can, but the basis is the value of the improvement on your property. Now, when I start out with a $160,000 home, and let's say the property is valued, the land is evaluated at 20,000, so the improvement is valued at 140,000, and that is depreciated at the rate set by the IRS, which they allow you 27.5 years to depreciate the house. But when you, after 10 years, let's say you take $5,000 depreciation every year, that's $50,000 off of your basis.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to go and sell the house, I would have to pay a capital gains tax on the difference between the selling price and the basis that I have. So that presents a problem. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that I'm not going to live forever. And when I pass on and pass on my estate to my children, that basis all of a sudden jumps up to present value. They do a reappraisal on the houses, and that sets a new basis for whoever inherits the properties that I pass on to them.
You know, I really hadn't thought through it all that way, to be quite honest, Ken, but you're right from now, and I'm not a CPA. So I would encourage everybody to do their own due diligence and talk to your CPA. But what you're talking about, Ken, there's more of a value there to invest in a finance property, because your basis goes down when you depreciate it, but upon the inheritance of a future heir, it would step back up again. Is that what
That's correct. Yeah.
I've never
That's
really.
my understanding. I don't practice tax law, so in fact,
Yeah.
my career was as a civil engineer. So
that is really cool, and I would certainly encourage those to ask a CPA that question. But it seems right to me too, and what an incredible advantage there if we're talking about future estates.
And Ken, I got to tell you, man, your next career might be host of the Not Your Average Investor Show, because you're getting a lot of love here on the chat. I just want to read a couple of these comments because they're just flying in. Marilyn Cotterman writes, "Ken's my new idol." Karen Jensen says, "Mine too." Denise S says, "This is great to hear. I had been hesitant to move money from an investment account and just started with 3 homes with other cash. Looking forward to being on the Ken plan." Roger Evans writes, "Ken, thanks for giving a real life account with your multiple purchases and various experiences with JWB." Ken, so you're really, you're adding a ton of value here. And I've got a great question here from Marilyn Cotterman, from Homosassa, Florida.
Home of the manatees.
Thank you. She says, "Hi, Ken. As I age, already 65, I'm looking for any rental investment properties to provide me with cash flow or sell it in 10 to 20 years with 4.3% appreciation for long-term care assistance as needed. If not needed, someone will inherit my property and carry on. Does this seem reasonable from your perspective? Do you think that that's a good plan from your perspective, Ken?"
Sure, I think it's wise to invest in with an eye to the future. I'm not sure I covered all of her question.
Well, it's just the idea that she's at the age of 65 and she's essentially wondering if this is a good investment at her age. You kind of
Well,
started at 75, right?
I guess my response would be that it's wise to put your money into real estate investments to make sure that you manage your cash flow appropriately. And no, but I was 84 when I started investing with JWB. Yeah, I'm 85 now.
I keep messing up that 10-year window for whatever reason. I'm sorry about that.
Got it stuck in your mind. I wanted to say something else when Greg mentioned that you get a cash, when you have cash assets and you get a cash return of, say, in round numbers, $1,000. That's $1,000 per house. So I've got $4,000 coming in there alone. That's plenty of money to pay the mortgage on my other 2 investments and my special needs that I illustrated previously. But I can also start putting money aside, and it's conceivable to me that within 2 or 3 years, I could accumulate enough additional cash to finance another home just on that basis alone, without having to borrow money on one of the existing cash purchases.
You're exactly right. When you've got cash coming in to this level, you have options. Originally, your goal was to hit that, I believe it was $2,000 a month. I think it was $1,000 a month at first, and then it was 2,000. Remember, right?
Right.
Yeah. And we've surpassed that. So now you've got this additional capital, and now we can look and say, okay, well, what would be the best return on investment with those dollars? And then what's the best thing for Ken and Carolyn to do? And either one of those, that may be the same answer, that may be different. We may go the more conservative route. That may go to paying down debt, right? We may go slightly more aggressive route, which that may go into your next investment property.
Or
right?
a combination of all 3.
Or a combination of all 3. But what we've done is so many people in this place of just trying to find this positive cash flow investment, and also, trying to find one that has a great return on investment, they're stuck and they think they only have the options of T-bills, bonds, annuities out there, right? But this is a great example of, Ken, your family looking for a different alternative and finding a better investment that produces more cash flow than a T-bill, for sure, more cash flow than a bond, right? But it also has this upside, which is great. And it has flexibility too. What you're talking about is your options of what to do with this excess cash flow. To me, that means that's flexible. You can use that for additional debt pay down. You can use that for additional asset accumulation. You can use it for helping I think you mentioned you have kids and grandkids that might need a little bit of help with credit card debt as well. I mean, how cool is that? And that's what the power of investing in rental properties can do for folks. So I'm so glad that you shared your story.
Well, thank you.
I got a couple more questions here for you, Ken, if you're still
Okay.
available, or did you have
Yeah.
something else you wanted to say there?
Yeah, get into the questions, and then I was going to quiz Greg on something on the um, financing out of your IRA.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's do it. That's a little
Yeah.
teaser. Stay here so that Ken teases Greg in the next segment.
Okay.
Rick Margin asked a question. Have you ever looked at other markets to compare?
Well, I have been in the stock market, and I have been in real estate investment trust type of arrangements, and also at one time when we moved to Pakistan in 1968, we had two homes. I think when we came back, one time we had three homes that we had rented, and then we decided to buy a lot up here in Los Altos and put our money into this home. Believe it or not, we moved in 1976 after spending $100,000 on building the house, and it's worth over $3 million today.
Wow.
Not
Man.
bad. I think Rick was asking if you looked at other markets for turnkey rental income properties. Did you take a look at that stuff, or did you take your friend's recommendation and go with JWB?
I trusted, Harold gave me two recommendations, and the first time I talked to the people at JWB, I didn't want to press the issue. I wanted to get going on something. So the JWB is the only company I have talked to. I did read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad on
Yes.
Greg's recommendation.
What did you
And I
think?
found that fascinating.
The book is powerful. Everybody out here who's watching right now needs to pick up that book. It'll change your life.
Yeah, that book keeps coming up on it is an ongoing discussion which I got pushed to read thanks to our friends here in the chat and our community, and that pushed me to invest in my own home too, right? So we can't mention that enough. Lee Bishop asks, Ken, have you set up a revocable trust for the kids?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I really don't know much about it, and I don't know. I haven't done that. We have a revocable trust for ourselves.
Okay. All right. Maybe that's a good.
Maybe that's the answer to his question. We have a revocable trust, and after we pass on, it passes our estate to the kids.
There you go. Samantha in the chat. She's only chatting to us, but to panelists, but she puts just bought the book. So looks like we just sold one more copy for Robert Kiyosaki. He owes you a couple bucks. Scott Everhart has a question. Could you talk more about what you needed to show or prove to the bank to get a mortgage with no W-2 or job? What did they ask for as an alternative evidence of income or funds to get the loan? Did you have to get a non-FHA back loan to do this? Could this work with getting loans for a non-working spouse? Any input on that?
Well, at the time we applied for the loan, we had the two assets, the two homes that we had already bought and owned free and clear. We had the asset of our home here, which, like I said, we refinanced under a jumbo reverse and got funded in January of 2019. And we only took out half of the money that we had invested that this home was worth. So we had a lot of cash on the asset side. The loan broker, they requested income tax returns for the past year. They requested statements from all of the credit card holders that we had, our bank statements. I think those were the main things that they were looking for.
I'll add on a little bit there. Many people assume that you're not able to get a loan. And just to answer, for Ken's properties, these were normal conventionally financed mortgages. This was not anything out of the ordinary. This is normally a loan that's backed by Fannie or Freddie which is a lot what allows him to get those incredible interest rates that he's talking about. Many people assume that if you don't have a job, that you're not able to get finance. That's not always the case. Now, let's say that most of the time that's pretty important. But other sources of income help you get qualified. So Social Security, right? If you have a pension, other investment income, these are all things that hit your adjusted gross income on your taxes. And that's what the bank is looking at. They're looking at what is your income, and they're also looking at what is your debts, your monthly recurring debts. And if that ratio is low enough, then they are going to look at you as being creditworthy and able to get the loan. So typically that's about a 45% debt to income ratio. And so without knowing Ken's file, that's probably what it was. His income from some of those other sources was a lot more than what his monthly recurring debts are. And that's how I would imagine that's how that worked.
Yes, we did have to provide Social Security income information.
Okay, there you go. We got a couple more specific to the greater picture. Let's do this. I would love to right now, because we're right at an hour. Do you gentlemen have a little bit more time? Ken, do you got somewhere you got to go, or
I'm retired. I have all day.
you got all day? Greg, how about you, buddy? You got somewhere?
I've got a hard stop at 1:40, so I got 10
1:40.
minutes.
Okay, cool. We got 10 minutes. So let's just fly through this. I just want to encourage people to continue this conversation in the Facebook group. If you go to jwbfacebookgroup.com, we've got almost 2,000 people there, right? Like, I think there's a lot of knowledge that can be exchanged based on how people are getting loans and those types of requirements and the irrevocable trust questions and different strategies. Source the knowledge of the group, I think, plays really nicely there.
That would be great. And I will definitely go in. I can see some of these questions that are a little bit more specific. I would encourage those folks to go ahead and put those in, and the group will definitely help give you an answer now. We have almost 2,000 members now, and I will also go in and chime in as well. So we'll get your questions answered, even if we can't do that here on the show. Yeah,
perfect. So David, Scott, I encourage you to put those into the group. I'm going to take note of these questions here and send them in directly via email to the JWB team. But I just want to make the best use of Ken's interaction with Greg, because I think there's a lot of value coming from Ken's viewpoints and Greg's contextualization. Marilyn Cotterman asks, do you plan to refinance even though you're just over 1 year into your loans? Ken, have you thought about starting to refinance any of that stuff?
I have not thought about that. I don't think it's necessary. I'm more on a track on our first one by one, picking these off and paying the loans down, because at my age, I have a greater comfort level with having assets without loans on them. But I will strongly consider taking out a loan on one of the homes that we own outright.
Excellent. All right, Ken, you said you had something to quiz Greg on. I would love to hear this.
Yes, Greg, I forget the term, but when you buy a property out of your IRA or some kind of investment like that, what do you call that?
It's a non-recourse loan.
Non-recourse loan. Okay. Well, I was thinking about a non-recourse loan because one of my kids was wanting to look into that. Mm-hmm. And as I looked at that, what I understand now is that in a non-recourse loan, the loan is the entity from which you draw the money is essentially viewed as another entity, but another person almost. And all the things that you do with the money in that go to that entity and not to you yourself. And for example, if you take out a loan and you can only borrow 50% of the value of the asset that you're buying through that non-recourse loan, you take out that loan and the deduction for taxes, the deductions for interest, and the deduction for taxes, all of the income sources that would otherwise accrue to you as an individual go to that IRA or that non-recourse entity. And so it's not quite as attractive to somebody who's looking for a way to cut their income taxes. Is that right?
A couple of things there. In theory, well, in generality, what you're talking about is what's the most tax advantageous way to buy properties. Do you get the same tax advantages that you get from buying it in your personal name as you do buying it through a retirement account? And the answer is that largely you get the same benefits, the same tax benefits. You just don't get double the tax benefits for putting it into your retirement account. So when you're buying it in your personal name, all those things that you mentioned, right? Your interest you get to deduct, right? Your property management fees, your maintenance costs, all of these things, your interest on your loan, right? All of these things you get to deduct, and that goes and it reduces the taxable income that you have for that year. And again, I'm not a CPA. Take this for what it is as a real estate investor doing his best, right? But on the IRA side, on the retirement account side, you already get this tax deferred status, which means that your investments can grow without you having to pay taxes on them as they're growing, and you pay taxes on them at the end. So everything you're going for as far as getting these deductions when you buy it personally, you're just trying to get to a tax deferred status, really. You're just trying to not pay taxes on the income that you earn that year. You already get that in the retirement account. In the retirement account, you don't get that plus additional, write-offs. You don't get double the write-offs. Did that answer your question, Ken?
Yes.
Okay. So it's an incredible way to do it. You do get the write-offs for private lending is something also to consider in your retirement accounts. A lot of folks love that because in private lending in your retirement account, you're already in that tax deferred stage, that tax deferred status, right? Where you don't get that when you do private lending personally. So just something else to talk about what the most advantageous tax vehicles are.
Well, I expect that if you own one or two homes in your IRA, that ownership accrues to your personal stable of homes, and it helps you to reach that level of 5 or 10,
Yes.
whatever you're going for, to reduce your management costs.
Yes, absolutely. It's all one JWB portfolio. The 5 homes to reduce your management fees to 9% is regardless if it's in your retirement account or if it's in your regular personal account.
I got one final question that I've just kind of been, this is the first time we ever talked about reverse mortgages. And I think Rick asked this in the chat a while back, and I've been trying to keep it in the forefront of my mind. And he asked it along the lines of, are you able to get out of that reverse mortgage if something happens? But I guess my overall question would be more, what's the downside of the reverse mortgage? Like what could go wrong for you, Ken, the way that you understand it, and Greg, the way that you understand reverse mortgages for someone in your position? Like what should they be thinking about before they make that decision?
I really don't see any downside. The people that lend, they are basically private lenders or private lender groups, and they will only loan you up to, starting out, maybe 50% of the appraised value of the home you're getting the loan on. So they're sitting there, they're pretty, and I don't know that there's any downsides. You can pay off the reverse mortgage. And that was another potential goal with JWB, is if I were able to generate enough income from the stable of homes, and if I live to be 120, I'd probably generate enough cash to be able to pay off my reverse mortgage, but I don't have to. You only have to pay the reverse mortgage off when you leave the home or sell the home. And leave the home, I presume they're talking about death and setting it into your estate.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm not that knowledgeable on reverse mortgages. So as Ken was talking here, I did a Google search for the downside of reverse mortgage. So I'm happy to share this incredible knowledge that I just gained in the last three minutes here. Really, like Ken was just talking about, you have a short amount of time to pay off the reverse mortgage if you decide to sell the house and leave. It says 6 months here on the article I'm reading. And so it talks about that the cost to put this into place are a little bit higher. And so if you only have the reverse mortgage for a short period of time, it might not be the most advantageous way to raise the capital because the costs are high, and then you have a very short time period to sell the house or to pay it off if you sell the house. There's a few other ones, but I would encourage others to look into that as well. I'm not really much of an expert on that.
Okay, and just to be clear, Ken, is the understanding that if you were to pass, does the lender then keep the home? Is that basically the reverse mortgage deal?
No, it's my understanding that when both Carolyn and I pass, that the estate has, I think it's 18 months to sell the asset. Or if somebody that's my heirs, if they have enough money to buy it, to pay off the loan, they can do that. But the loan has to be paid off.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. And listen, you just mentioned Carol. I wanted to give her a shout out. I know that when we talked, she just passed her 10-year cancer-free anniversary. Is that accurate, Ken, recently?
Correct. Yeah, in September.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Wow. That's amazing.
That is
And
wonderful.
also, I wanted to tell you that we have been married, well, in 1 week, we will celebrate our 59th anniversary.
Wow. That is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Ken, we are so happy we got to celebrate, celebrate Carol's anniversary and preemptively celebrate your 59th wedding anniversary here on the show. This has been really, really great. I want to encourage anybody that's been on the show, that was here today. Thank you so much for the love, right? Like, this is really, really cool to see the chat light up like this with Ken's story. And, I hear a couple of like really interesting questions that are happening. It sounds like some of you are contemplating maybe investing at this point based on what you heard. I encourage you to just hop on with chatwithjwb.com. I got some questions in the chat about like, who's the mortgage broker that you'd use, what kind of plans you want, things of the sort. If you go to chatwithjwb.com, pick out a time, they're going to walk you through all that, right? Like, JWB makes it as easy as possible to get into this asset class. It's a good use of your time. And if you don't, feel like committing to a phone call with somebody, go to jwbwebclass.com and check that out. But more than anything, I'm hosting the watch party tonight in the Facebook group. I want you to join the Facebook group, jwbfacebookgroup.com. Hang out with our cool club of almost 2,000 investors. We want to get it to 2,000 people by the end of the year, right? So if you're in there, you're active, tell a friend, have them join us, join the JWB community where you see all of our content. You see all of our friends like Ken and Lee and Marilyn and everybody in the chat that's active in there. Just be part of the family into 2021. We'd love to see you there. Ken, this has been incredibly educational for me. So I really, really appreciate it, but I'm going to leave it to Greg to kind of thank you and take it off here. Greg, take it away, buddy.
Ken, your story is just so incredible. Thank you for sharing your story and all of the really important details that you shared with us. I mean, it's such an honor and an opportunity to be able to get inside the head of somebody else who has made that decision, made somewhat difficult decisions, different decisions than what, let's say, the normal investing world does. And you took a leap of faith with JWB, and I really, really appreciate you as a client and getting to be a part of you and Carolyn's success story, as well as your family now. So this is just incredible. I'm just so thankful for you. And I'm really excited that the entire group gets to learn from you. So thanks again, Ken.
You're welcome. And it was a privilege.
Ken, you got any final words of wisdom that you want to leave us with? I know that you wanted to talk about your mission and what you're doing and what you want to leave with your kids. Can you leave us with a little nugget?
Well, my youngest daughter is a missionary in Baguio, the Philippines, with her husband, and they're right now they're doing a lot of food distribution because there are a lot of people that can't work there. They're locked down just like we are. And so there's a lot of needs over there. That's one area we help. Glad to help out our grandchildren and our children where we can. But I'm really thankful for JWB, and it just seems like when we bought into it, we became part of a family. I really appreciate y'all, and say hi for me to Mike Stewart and Ashley. She has been wonderful to us, and I really appreciate her.
Will do. Absolutely. Thank you, Ken.
All right. See you all on Thursday.